The great thing about the gala for me is just this mashup. It's just a beautiful mashup of all things going on.
It's something that's incredibly welcoming and positive.
It's so impressive.
It is such a big deal for so many people.
It's one of the biggest events on the Socialist and Trade Unionist calendar.
It's a focus for the Labour movement, which isn't based in London.
It's a special day. It's probably the best weekend in the calendar.
It's not the gala, it's the big meeting. Durham Big Meeting is and always has been my favourite day of the year.
It's an amazing event, and long may it continue.
And one part is a day out in Durham.
It's about having fun together.
We celebrate the fact that we're still here. We're a resilient bunch.
Next part is about parade of heritage and culture.
You feel really that sense of history.
To see the banners, what they depict, unity is strength.
There's no other brass band display like this in the world.
And of course it bounces off the walls and off the streets and cobbles of the town.
And then you've got this layer of politics that go on the top.
One day when actually the working classes take back Durham City.
What you're actually looking at is Labour in power.
It's solidarity, isn't it?
All that rich, wonderful tradition of 150 years.
You know, it celebrates dignity and strength and pride.
The gala's growing all the time, it's changing. But it's also become more exciting and more, more vibrant.
More and more people turn up.
But I think the message that must be given, the Durham Miners Gala is successful because it gives working people hope.
Every time I feel a sense of renewed enthusiasm for what is possible.
It is just a wonderful expression of who we are, what we are and why we're here.
The working class and its policies are still around. That's why a lot of people go, and that's why I go.
The only reason this can still happen is because people believe in themselves, and it's an expression of confidence about where you come from and everything that arose from that communal activity of co-production and the culture in communities which is communal. People wish to preserve it. And I can't think of anything else that does that.
Hello and welcome to Durham. Welcome to Red Hills, the home of the Durham Miners Association. Today is the second Saturday in July, which normally would have meant that there was an excess of 200,000 people on the streets of Durham celebrating our mining heritage and culture by way of the Durham Miners Gala. Unfortunately, due to the current pandemic, the decision was made some time ago to cancel this year's event because of the coronavirus outbreak. And I think we made the right decision, but we needed to mark this event. Thus, we've got the online version of the Durham Miners Gala. Can I just, first of all, pass on our condolences, the condolences of the Durham Miners Association and our supporters to all those who have lost loved ones in this current pandemic. Our thoughts are with you and the memories will live on, I'm certain. I'd like to thank the key workers. I really like to thank the key workers who have kept this country going in very, very unusual circumstances. And you will be hearing from key workers during the course of this event. Rank and file key workers who have played a massive part in keeping us safe, making sure we were fed and making sure our streets were safe and our homes were safe. During the course of the event, you'll be listening to lots of brass band music, our wonderful brass bands. There's still something like 25 brass bands in the county of Durham, and we'll celebrate their contribution to our culture, our heritage, and to the Miners Gala. There's also a series of new short films which will be shown during the course of the day. We're very hopeful and we're confident that in 2021 we'll be back. The Durham Miners Gala will be back bigger and better than ever. It'll mark the 150th anniversary from the first Durham Miners Gala back in the first big meeting back in 1871. With that in mind, I'd like to make a direct appeal to everybody For over 100 years, the Durham Miners Gala was paid for by the contributions of working miners. For the last 30 years, well, 27 years, we haven't had a working miner in the county of Durham. And in the last few years, the funds have been raised by our Marras, the Friends of the Durham Miners Gala, who are doing a tremendous job to ensure that the funding is there to keep this magnificent event on track and keep it going. So I'd urge everybody, give what you can to the Marras to keep the Durham Miners Gala going well into the future. I'd like now to start with a short film that gives an overview of what the gala is all about.
We're sitting here in Red Hills, which is the second Durham Miners Hall. The first one is now a fruit and veg shop in North Road in Durham. That was built and it opened in 1880. By the end of the 19th century, this union is so big that it's got to get itself a new building, and this is it. The Miners Hall at Red Hills, Durham.
You know, this is a purpose-built trade union building built by, you know, my father and his father and his father. Their halfpennies and pennies built this building.
And that wealth was distributed from this building throughout the lodges of the coalfield. So if you were a lodge delegate, you would have to get an invitation to come into this building. You couldn't just rock up. And as you come up the drive, you have on your right 4 men who are the founders of the Durham Miners Association, cast in stone. And that largely is a statement to the coal owners, saying we can have a country mansion like you have. And when you come to talk to us, this is the place you come.
It is a place where I think the mindset of our early leaders would have been, we are owned by the coal owners, let them come and negotiate with us in a building that shows our status. Now we're on a par with these people. And, you know, we're not subservient to them. Every time I come in this building, I catch my breath. And, you know, I think most people do the same.
It's worth considering when you look at the gala now, where its origins come from. And the Durham Miners Association was started by liberal Methodists. It was built on the back of religion and reform. So the Durham Miners were always, in terms of most people's assessment, on the right wing of the Labour Party. So Sam Watson takes office in 1936 as General Secretary of the Durham Miners Association and binds the Durham Miners into what you might call a reformist Labour Party position. So they were representing the interests of the state, and even prior to nationalisation, some of the coal owners above that of their own members. What comes out of that is the gala itself is used for fundamentally 2 reasons. One, as a showcase of power and a meeting place for the powerful and the influential, and this is all held in the county hotel. And then you have the mass of the people who are celebrating their heritage and culture on the street, parading with their banners, their bands, and you have to remember, you know, this was 250,000 people and more at the height of the coalfield. The origins of the Durham Miners Gala, when it first came to Durham, was, you can imagine this, is the people of the county, the coal miners, coming into Durham to claim their wreaths. And it was the start of a political movement of organised labour, centred around speeches. The lodges would put forward quite often very radical speakers, where of course the Durham Miners leaders wanted to bring forward the leaders of the Labour Party, generally a more right-wing approach. The turning point for that really was probably in the mid-80s, when the Durham coalfield went to the left in terms of leadership.
When I started, of course, you know, the speakers from the platform would be expounding their views about workers' rights and what was happening in the pits and pay and conditions and so on and so forth. With there no longer being any collieries, of course, they can't go on about that. Instead, we have usually a left-wing platform that is expounding the values of most of the people who are, you know, coming onto the racecourse to watch them and to hear what they say, and that's a good thing. There is more of a family atmosphere today than ever, I feel. There's more of a picnic atmosphere. There is more of a, you know, an old-fashioned day out atmosphere than we see elsewhere. And again, you call me old-fashioned, but you know, it's a wonderful thing, and the people seem to love it.
The working class that we're looking at today is in some ways very different from the kind of working class that we see depicted in archive footage of the Durham Miners Gala. It's not all white, and it's certainly not male. And it's important to remember that the working class was never just male, and it was never just white. It's vital that we remember that going forward, because groups like migrants and women are going to be at the forefront of this new movement. But I think a new movement's there. I think we can see that in the fact that the gala has survived. We can see it in the many hundreds of thousands of people who've joined the Labour Party because of the hope that Jeremy Corbyn's given them. We can see it in the fact that some of these trade unions are growing in assertiveness. So I think there's a lot of room for hope.
It's the pride. It's like, God, we did all this, you know, and we fought the state. We didn't win, but by God, we fought them and we give them a run for the money.
I can remember bursting with pride when seeing these incredible works of art and hearing this wonderful, what I would call working class music, played by our colliery bands. I would be bursting with pride and thinking, you know, I'm part of this. And it was just very, very emotional.
My personal experience, the experience of work, all sort of celebrated, and my culture celebrated on the streets of Durham as we take over the city, which to me is like, it's really emotional for me.
I didn't grow up with that kind of experience of living in a mining community, but I felt it every year when I went to the gala. I felt like this is like my history, this is my heritage, and it was just, to this day, it's still my favourite day of the year, better than Christmas.
But at the big meeting, you always knew, if you come from Washington, Scarborough, wherever, if you saw Easington Banner, you look around the field at big meeting day and you saw Easington Banner, you knew your family and your friends would be there. So you were all together.
Well, you don't have to be a miner to come to the Durham Miners Gala, and I think more and more people aren't. You know, you hear a lot more people say, I'm not from a mining background, but I come to this event and the hair stands up on the back of my neck. And until you've been, you don't quite feel that tingle and that emotion of being amongst all of that.
And it's the best place from people who come from any walk of life, any job, whoever they are, wherever they work, to come together, not just to march down the street and be so proud, but it's the discussion after.
Because it is some beacon, I think, to people who believe in collective action and collective responsibilities and collective ways of being will want to be here.
Lots of people talk about the gala as symbolising working class culture, but working class culture isn't a term that I much like, because it suggests that somehow working class people only create this kind of niche culture, you know, and that there's this kind of middle and upper class out there who have proper culture, and we just have this kind of working class stuff. And if you look at what the gala is about, art, poetry, music, it's an incredible culture that comes out of everyday life and also gives expression to those things which can create very strong emotions when experienced individually, oppression, exploitation in the workplace and so on, and shows them in ways that mean that we can collectively express that anger and think about how to do something collective and cooperative with that anger to make the world a better place, to actually change the world in which we live. And that's an incredibly powerful kind of culture.
I think today it is not just a Durham Miners Gala. There are lots of other unions caught up in the wonderful sense of occasion, and they come and march in solidarity to the miners. But you know, to see fresh-faced youngsters from Unite and RMT and Unison, GMB come in and continue the tradition that we have always, you know, been part of is something tremendous.
I was in school on the 18th of March when I got the news that the Durham Miners Gala was to be cancelled for 2020. As the daughter of an ex-miner and the chair of the NASUWT North East Working Group for the event, I was gutted. What was poignant though was when I told the students I was teaching that afternoon, They too were really disappointed. I work in a town that was home to the Dean and Chapter Colliery for over 60 years and had a mining heritage long before that, so the children I teach look forward to being part of the family event every year. But as all hard workers do, teachers, miners and the amazing key workers we've relied on throughout the pandemic, we adapt. So I'm glad to be able to bring a little bit of what we do to this new way of celebrating our brilliant history today. In celebration of teachers who've been working hard in lockdown, and doffing my cap to Matt Abbott, who would have been marching with us today, I've written a poem. I hope you enjoy it. We've worked from home, we've upped our meds, we've kept on filling up youngsters' heads. We've teamed up and zoomed, we've made new schemes, we've been slated by the Mail and many a meme. We've educated our own, we've put food on their plate, we've woken up early and gone to bed late. We've looked at the risks, we've cared for one another, we've worn PPE until we smother. We've done CPD, we've adapted skills overnight, we've tried to stay safe and fight the good fight. We've been on rota, we've all taken our turn, we've been there to ensure opportunities to learn. We've kept in touch with children, we've gone live and supported, we're certainly not lazy like it's been purported. We're looking to the future and how things will change. We're adapting our teaching for physical range. We're desperate to do what we do best, but everything must pass the safety test. We care for our profession and the children we teach. We want to be back within arm's reach. But health comes first of everyone involved, so we'll do what we have to until this is solved.
Of course, the soundtrack of the gala, the backdrop to the gala, is it's provided by our wonderful brass bands. There are more than 25 brass bands currently operating playing in the county of Durham. And they keep our tradition, our heritage alive, our musical heritage, our musical tradition. They keep that alive by playing at the gala and elsewhere. And of course, they also pass on their skills. The older ones pass the skills on to a younger generation. And I would urge people, really, if you're interested in music and you consider playing a musical instrument, join one of our brass bands. Contact the local brass band and have a discussion with them about how you can help. At that, I would like to introduce a short film about our wonderful brass bands.
It is in the human condition, isn't it, to express yourself, to show there's more to you than work. And it was never easy for mining communities to just express themselves in the way they wanted. So as musical instruments get more sophisticated and you get mass-produced musical instruments, working class men can afford to buy them. And of course, some of the companies, some of the mills, some of the collieries knew there was good publicity to be had in a good brass band. Some of these bands are by subscription with the men, some of them are paid for by the company, some are a mix. After 1920 you get something called the Coal Industry Welfare Organisation, CISWO. They produce the best clubhouses in the northeast. So from the early 20th century you get high quality instruments, high quality musicians, and this competitive spirit and this love of the marching beat.
We all love Gala Day. You know, it's just a really, really, really nice day. There'll be about 50 or 60 bands come together and it's just a really good day out. I think for a brass band, it's just you get to play your music too, and everybody appreciates what you play. It's the tradition, you know, the fact that you know that you are doing the same thing that they've been doing for the last 100 and odd years. And even though there's no collieries anymore, that a lot of bands are still associated with collieries, and it's the tradition that them.
There's two things they're showing. One thing is the main mast, the main sail. That is the banner. And the banner stands for the village, it stands for the pit, it stands for the community. But this isn't just a flag. This is a labour movement. It's got to move. And when you've got the banner and you've got the band at the front, often playing a military air, a good marching step, you get the sense that this is something on the move. We're moving forward. This is a band in step. So you can't but respond to that. It's quite a beautiful thing, actually, especially if the people marching with you are comrades and friends.
It's a bit like having a second family. You've got everybody from like 12 years old up to 70 in our band, and so it's like having mums and dads and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and cousins. And like Glenys has been in the band since she was 7, and she was just basically presented with a cornet, and there you go, off you go.
There's no rivalry. I think we rely on each other for support. For example, I think it was 2 years ago we didn't have a brass band to take our banner in, and it was through having a drink with some of the guys from the other banner groups. They said, we've got contacts in Yorkshire, we can put you in touch with brass bands down there who want to come. So that's our highlight, to play in front of the Royal County Hotel balcony. That's a very popular area on the route down to the gala, where most of the people stand to enjoy the brass bands.
It's not just marching. It has what we came to call soul. It's a kind of the first soul music in this country, because there's a kind of elegiac quality to a brass band when it's going slow, a hymnal quality. And some of the most beautiful tunes to express sorrow and death, of course, which mining communities knew only too well, came out the brass band movement. A particular song, I don't know if you know it, it's called Gresford, written by Robert Saint, who was a heaven man, in 1934 to commemorate the 265 men who were killed at Gresford Colliery, North Wales in 1934. And that piece of music was played every year outside the County Hotel in Durham for any pit that had lost a man. The band would stop, the lodge would stop, the banner would stop, and they would play Gresford.
We play in Durham Cathedral, and that's just fabulous. There's usually anywhere between sort of 3 and 5 bands go in, and it's the banners that are chosen, and the band that's associated with that banner goes in with it. And you walk into a very slow, solemn march, and you play for the hymns, and the cathedral is packed, absolutely packed with people. And then when you walk out, the bands march out to something really rousing, and everybody claps and claps along with the music, and you have the dean, everybody from the cathedral. It's just it's lovely, it's really nice. And the sound in the cathedral is amazing.
The amazing thing about brass bands and industrial Britain is the industries have gone, but in many cases the bands have stayed. It was men and women in places like this.
I think if the pandemic's taught us one thing, it's taught us that the economy in this country, its infrastructure, survived through the pandemic because of workers, normal working class people doing jobs that quite often get unrecognised. Cleaners, delivery people, people working in hospitals. And I think a lesson that will be learnt from that is the importance of those people, and the importance of working class people, and more importantly, the importance of trade union representation for those working class people. So hopefully next year's gala will be a celebration of that and a move forward for trade unions, and a recognition of the work we need to do to safeguard those people in the future.
When we gather on the racecourse on Gala Day, before the speeches, we always mark the event by playing the miners' hymn, Gresford. Today, we have the Durham Miners Association brass band here in the grounds at Red Hill. It's windy out there, so please bear with us. At this particular poignant time, we remember all those who we've lost from the labour movement, the friends and family in communities, and all of those around the country who've lost loved ones to coronavirus, COVID-19. We'll dedicate this hymn, this performance, to all those people who have gone. Many, many thanks to the Durham Miners Association brass band for that wonderful contribution. I did tell you it was windy out there, but it was a great performance nonetheless. Over the years, some of the greatest figures of the labour and trade union movement have addressed the Durham Miners Gala. In 1906, just months after being elected as the first leader of the Labour Party, Keir Hardie addressed the crowds at the Miners' Gala in Durham. He began a tradition because Labour leaders have spoken at the gala ever since that time, with the odd exception, of course. Today, we're really pleased to be joined by both the leader and deputy leader of the Labour Party. Let's hear first from Angela Rayner, the deputy leader, and then Keir Starmer, the newly elected leader.
We cannot be together today, but the values of unity, solidarity and collective strength that are embodied by the Durham Miners Gala are as important and relevant now as they ever were. It is these values that are helping us get through this crisis, from our NHS and social care workers putting their lives on the line to keep us safe, to the volunteer mutual aid groups and support networks on every street and across every village, town and city in the country. So I want to pay tribute to our key workers and all of the Labour members, activists and trade unionists who are working to support our communities. And I want to say a particular thank you to the women in our movement. I'm proud that in 2018 we unveiled a banner recognising the contribution of women in our trade unions and their role supporting our mining communities. Today, 4 in 5 key workers in health and social care are women. So when we talk about the lack of PPE and low pay in the care sector, that is an issue that disproportionately affects women. Female workers and workers from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds are more likely to be key workers on the front line. And coronavirus is having a shockingly disproportionate impact on Black Britons in particular. So fighting our class means standing up for the working class in all of its diversity. I came of age in our trade union movement as a care worker on poverty pay and a 0 hours contract, organising with my union and my workmates for better pay and working conditions. This crisis has shown the power of workers when we stand together united and shown the importance of trade unions fighting to defend workers' rights. Together, we are strong And in the months ahead, we will need our collective strength as we fight to make sure that every worker is safe at work and to make sure that the most vulnerable in our society don't bear the burden of the economic impact of the coronavirus. Our mining communities know about the human costs of mass unemployment. We know how it feels to be abandoned by a Tory government and for an entire generation to be consigned to what the Thatcher government called managed decline. We cannot let that happen again. The North-South divide is continuing to grow, and we cannot afford for the economic impact of the coronavirus to increase this gap even more. The Tories talk of a good game on this issue, but their record of turning their back on the North speaks for itself. The past we inherit, the future we build. The Durham Miners Gala is a celebration of working class history, culture and our communities. But it is also an opportunity for us to come together and reflect on the struggles we face today. Fighting for our key workers to get the pay and the recognition we deserve. Fighting to make sure that every worker has the right protective equipment and is safe at work. Fighting against pay cuts and to stop workers being laid off. I hope that next year the Gala can return bigger and better than ever before in its 150th anniversary year. But in the meantime, we have work to do.
Durham Miners Gala is a celebration of community, of working class culture and solidarity. This year's event has, of course, sadly been put on hold as we come together to defeat coronavirus in the hope that we will be able to return bigger and better next year. We're drawing on the spirit of the gala to defeat the virus. The trade unionists who have such a proud history of coming together to protect their jobs, their industries and their communities. The gala reminds us each year, amongst the proud, incredible banners and the brass bands, of that labour history. For more than a century, the gala was funded by the miners of Durham Coalfield, and now it's our duty, and my duty, as Labour leader to support the gala. And that's why I'm proud to be a Mara. We must never forget the origins of our party. It was founded as the political arm of the trade union movement to represent workers and their families so their voices could be heard in Parliament. This is as important today as it was a century ago. Coronavirus has shown the strength in our communities. It's shown that our economy depends on the essential workers who've kept our country going. But it's also shown the challenges that some places and some people have been particularly affected. We need to build on our foundation as a working class movement to build a fairer society for all. And let me say this now, and let me say it clearly. Labour will not allow workers and their communities to pay for the cost of this crisis. It was not of your making. And many of you and your families have been on the front line in our hospitals, our shops, our care homes, keeping schools open for the children of key workers, and in so many other jobs that have been undervalued and underpaid for too long. But we must also draw on the spirit of the gala to ensure your jobs and industries are protected as we emerge from this crisis. That is why Labour is calling for a back-to-work budget. We're already paying the economic price, and the government's slow and confused response to saving jobs is dangerous. That's why a back-to-work budget must have one focus: jobs, jobs, jobs. To do that, we need to work together, we need to be united. We will always remember the Gala motto: the past we inherit, the future we build. So for now, we carry with us the spirit of the Gala wherever we go. And we look forward to coming together in person in 2021, in solidarity.
My name is Miriam Afemba and I'm a staff nurse at Newcastle Hospitals and also a Unison workplace representative. I'm from Zimbabwe originally, where trade unionism looks and feels very different from here in the UK. I'd never heard of the Durham Miners Gala until I got involved with my local Unison branch. Now I look forward to it every year. It's a huge celebration of trade unionism, and I enjoy participating with my Unison family and taking my daughter along as well, Tia. This year has been extremely challenging year for all of us. Working in an acute NHS trust during the current pandemic has been particularly stressful and challenging. The solidarity amongst my colleagues has been brilliant, and the support from the public has been amazing. That's the spirit of the big meet. Marching collectively behind brass bands is so uplifting. If I was at the gala this year, I'd be calling on the government to properly recognize the work of NHS workers, get round the table and start negotiations, early pay award for all NHS staff. We deserve it. I'm going to miss you, Durham. See you next year. Solidarity, Miriam.
Thanks to Angela and thanks to Kia. The both, of course, are Maras. So I urge again, everybody listening to this, watching this event, join up today. Join up and ensure that the Durham Miners Gala continues long into the future. Throughout this event, we've been hearing from key workers. And I'd like to once again to pay tribute to the wonderful work and sacrifices these men and women have made particularly over the recent past during this pandemic. But our thanks and clapping on a Thursday night and all the rest of it doesn't recompense them. It doesn't buy school uniforms or put food on the table. They deserve, after this is over, they deserve safer working conditions and better pay. It's my real pleasure now, because we're going to be joined by a great friend of the Durham Miners and the Gala, and indeed the Red Hills Appeal, the General Secretary of the Fire Brigade Union, Matt Rack, who'll talk about where we'll go from here in the key services.
Sisters, brothers, comrades and friends, greetings from the Fire Brigade Union to this online Durham Miners Gala. Durham is one of the highlights of my year, and I know the gala is also the highlight for tens of thousands of people in the labour and trade union movement, as well as for the local communities in the North East. And the reason we can't be together this year for the first time since the Second World War is because, of course, of the COVID-19 crisis and the desire to keep people safe in these very challenging times. And of course, COVID has highlighted the reality, the stark reality of some of the injustices and inequalities in our society, because it is workers who have borne the brunt of this crisis, as is always the case. We've seen a stark reminder that those in power, those in government, have failed to plan and prepare for this eventuality, even though the risk was known. That's been exacerbated by 10 years of austerity that have devastated our public services, attacked our health service, devastated local government, attacked all our services, including my own, the fire and rescue service. And that has meant that our public services were not as prepared as they should have been in the face of this terrible pandemic. But we've seen, nevertheless, those who have stepped up, and it's been workers, key workers on the front line who have stepped up to keep our society going through these past months. Those responsible, in my view, have to be held to account, and the buck stops at the top. That rests with the Prime Minister and government, and we need to ensure that they are held answerable for their actions and for the failures to plan and prepare for the pandemic as it unfolded. And the crisis has also shown who really matters, who really does the work that counts. And we could see it's not those making the profits out of society. It's not those who sit in the boardrooms clicking buttons and making vast fortunes for themselves and their organisations. No, it's ordinary working people. in our public services, in our health service, in social care, but all across our public services who've carried on the front line, delivering to make sure that our society can continue to function, that those in need of care get it, that those in need of education get it. Those are the people who've stepped up to the plate over the past few months. But it's not just in public services, all across the private sector too. It's workers who have stepped up, who ensure that food carries on being produced and processed, who deliver, who drive trains and lorries to make sure that the goods we need get to the shops. And of course, those people in the retail industry. So we see in every area, it's workers who've been on the front line and workers who have delivered. And I think at the end of the crisis, what we're going to see, sadly, is some nice words said about those who stepped up, some nice words said about those in public services, in the health service and elsewhere, and some praise. But we're then going to see, and we're already starting to see, attacks on workers as the bosses expect us to pay the price yet again for the crisis. Unfortunately, that's what the system does. We're already seeing tens and hundreds of thousands of jobs under threat or going. And we have to put a marker down here at the gala that we're not prepared to accept that. We want to see a different way of doing things. And those are around the principles that our movement was built on. The principles of solidarity, of looking after each other. The principles that put workers at the heart of decision making. The principles of solidarity and socialism. They're the ideas, the principles that we carry in our hearts and in our heads. And they should be the guiding light as we enter the post-COVID world. We can't be together today, but we will, over coming months, organise together, talk together, think for ourselves and organise for ourselves. That's the only way working people have ever made progress. It remains as true today as it ever has been. Solidarity forever, and thanks very much.
The COVID-19 pandemic has caused massive disruption to services, but with everyone pulling together, we have found ways to get around the problems to keep everything running as smoothly as possible. In my role as a health and safety rep, I have visited council depots doing COVID checks to ensure all measures have been put in place to protect key workers who have been working through the pandemic. Now is not the time to be complacent. We still need to follow guidelines for everyone's safety and for the protection of our NHS.
For many years now, the Durham Miners have prided ourselves on being an internationalist organisation. The Gala is a place where we come together in solidarity, where we give a platform to ongoing campaigns. And I'd like to state now, reaffirm our position. The Durham Miners Association supports the Grenfell Justice campaign and the Black Lives Matter campaign. And to give you an insight into both of those very important campaigns for social justice, we're now joined by our friend and comrade, Yvette Williams, from the Justice for Grenfell campaign.
Hi, greetings from the Justice for Grenfell campaign. I wanted to start by saying how beautiful it was last year when Ross, Dave and Alan came to visit us in London. And one of the things that we recognise that we both hold the biggest street celebrations in Britain. We have the Notting Hill Carnival in the south. You have this wonderful gala in the north. They're also the two biggest across Europe. And I'm so proud to be with you today at the gala. We also recognised that social inequality damages our communities universally. Our struggles and demands may be different at times, but we must never forget that we have more in common than the things that separates us. In the struggle and resistance against inequality and exploitation, we must also remember that the issue of race is an issue of class, and the issue of class is an issue of race. They go together, and therefore we must join together in order to resist these conditions, and we must fight to win. And it's in this place where our community is on the night of the 14th of June 2017, when I stood at the base of the tower with my daughter and watched Grenfell Tower burn. It told me everything that was wrong with the society that we lived in. And once the emergency services had left, who was there to look after our people? It was the community and others who gathered to join us. No statutory services came to assist us at the beginning. Grenfell Tower still sits on our skyline, albeit that it's covered up, but it still holds up a mirror to the world of how social inequality thrives in our society. Flammable cladding also equals inequality. It was put on the tower to make it look pretty for the wealthy of the borough. Today, 23,000 homes still remain with cladding on. 3 years after the fire, those households have children in, families whose lives are still threatened. It's a bit like the COVID disaster happening at the moment, the pandemic, a virus that has also quickly acquired the status of inequality. We have an inquiry happening into what happened at Grenfell Tower, and they have chosen to leave social inequality out of the terms of reference, so no recommendations will be delivered for change. At this moment, I must refer to the Black Lives Matter movement here. We all saw George Floyd brutally murdered by the police, officers who were paid to protect him. But let's not be under any illusion that this same systemic and institutional brutality is not present in Britain. The police are a public service, but on whom did the miners rely upon at Orgreave when they were being attacked? And who did the Liverpool fans rely on in the trample and crush at Hillsborough? At the time of Grenfell, there were cuts to the fire service. At the time of this pandemic, there were cuts to the National Health Service. Care homes have been privatised for profit and adult care budgets have been reduced. What public services have nurtured, funded and been treasured to assist us in our hour of need? We often just have to fall back on our own communities. George Floyd's murder shows that those who pursue profit and power show us no humanity. But at the same time, it lays bare that it's the exploitation of mining communities like Durham, the Grenfell community, the horrors of the Atlantic slave trade, imperial plundering. We're the ones that have contributed most to the world economies, and everyone should be outraged at George Floyd's murder. They really need to remove their knees off our necks now. I've got so much to say, but so little time. But I'm going to share with you that ever since my father carried me in his arms in 1972 to see the demonstration in support of the miners in Saltley, Birmingham, where we lived, I've known from him, and since then from my own experience, what solidarity really means to me. It's usually connected with strong and working communities. It gives such a feeling of warmth and support. So I also know that solidarity means strength. As I said at the beginning, I am so proud to be with you today. Have a great day and remember the things that keep us together. We have our culture, we have our organising and organisations, we have our strength, we have our communities and we have our love. I really hope to be with you in person next year to celebrate your 150th year. Until then, keep going in solidarity. One love.
Train drivers have found themselves in a position of driving at the height of this COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown, ensuring that local and national transport routes have remained open to key workers needing to travel, all with the knowledge that we're placing ourselves at the risk of exposure. And so it's at times like this that I count myself lucky that I have access to a union like ASLEF. They've been working in partnership with the industry to deliver an increase in environmental cleaning and assessment of facilities, ensuring that social distancing can be adhered to. Workplace safety for all railway staff has been one of the paramount goals for ASLEF and our sister unions at this time of national emergency. I've had the honour of carrying my branch's banner at the gala, and one of the casualties of this lockdown has been the 2020 big meeting, and that in itself has had an impact to people. Not just because of the opportunity of social gathering with friends and family, but because of what the Durham Miners Gala represents. It's a celebration of working class culture and working class passion and talents, and it's also a remembrance for a community whose fathers and grandfathers worked in the pits, and whose mothers and grandmothers held those homes together, whose family roots quite literally bore its way through the earth so that the branches of those family might be nourished from their labours and thrive and enjoy something better for themselves. The Durham Miners Gala has survived strikes and wars and the decimation of an industry, and I've got no doubt that it'll survive this COVID-19 pandemic. And so it's that pride and unity that will serve us in the struggle that is going to come. Because after this lockdown, our communities are facing serious hardship not seen for a generation. And it's up to us to organise as a community to make sure that we hold people in power to account. That inequality and injustice is not just a way of life, and that government ministers lining their pockets to provide political favours to party donors is never acceptable, especially when key workers and thousands of families are becoming more and more reliant on food banks just to survive. What this lockdown has shown is that our country is most reliant on its key workers, who are on average some of the lowest paid in the country. And with that in mind, they should be rewarded with a pay that reflects their necessity. So let's all stand together in solidarity, because unity is strength. Thank you.
Of course, a great highlight of the Durham Miners Gala is the cathedral service, which has been a part of every Durham Miners Gala since 1897. The brass bands play in the cathedral. Banners are blessed. New banners are taken there to be blessed. And it means a great deal to us in the Durham Miners Association, and means a great deal to our supporters and our communities. We're really proud of our partnership and relationship with the wonderful Durham Cathedral. And it's my great pleasure now to introduce the Dean of Durham, the Very Reverend Andrew Tremlett.
The Miners' Festival service is one of the key moments in the life of County Durham, where we celebrate the community and the mining heritage of the North East region. An absolute highlight for me, after the parade through the marketplace in Durham, is the sight of the newly created banners accompanied by brass bands processing into the cathedral to be blessed by the bishop. We're saddened that it can't happen today, as it's done for well over a century. It's truly an occasion when the people of County Durham are welcomed into their cathedral. Each of those banners represents a community and its people. This year, we in County Durham, the country and the world as a whole, are living through extraordinary times. Coronavirus has brought sadness and loss to many, and we mourn those who are no longer with us. But it's also shown how resilient we can be and how adversity can be transformative. The people who are the National Health Service, key workers, and all who have provided care and essential services, they're testament to this. We can all be beacons of hope as we slowly emerge from lockdown and rise to the many challenges which face the country. The times ahead will be difficult as the full impact of the coronavirus pandemic emerges and we continue to live with its threat. The Miners' Memorial here at the Cathedral includes a text from the book of Job, part of which reads, "They are forgotten of the foot that passeth by." But this is a challenge to all of us, that the lives lost shall be remembered and celebrated, not forgotten. Year by year, the Miners' Festival service is an occasion to remember and to celebrate those who lost their lives through the hard physical labour of work underground. At this time, we remember and celebrate those who have lost their lives through the horrific pandemic. The beginning of John's Gospel includes the words, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it." As we face uncertain times ahead, we trust in Jesus Christ, who died and was raised again, and who is our light and our life.
Well, thanks for joining us today to celebrate this wonderful occasion, the Durham Miners Gala, celebrating our history, our culture and our heritage. I'd like to thank everyone who's contributed. I'd like to make another appeal to join the Marras, a couple of pounds a month, which will ensure that the gala can continue, that we're in a financial position to continue presenting the gala into the very, very distant future. There is more content online throughout the evening and throughout the night. I'd urge you all to stay online as long as you can to celebrate our culture, our heritage in the way of the Durham Miners Gala. And as a final message, I'd just like to ask everybody, stay safe, look after each other, do what we always do, look after each other in our communities. And we look forward to welcoming you into Durham on the second Saturday of July in 2021 for the 150th anniversary of the gala. And I promise you, it'll be the biggest and best to date. Thank you, stay safe and take care.